That national pride, which in other peoples is based on the memory of glorious achievements on the battlefield, on artistic renown, or on commercial importance, found its support among the Jews in their religious history, in their divinely given pledges, and in laws of supernatural origin. And indeed, they were a race of religious geniuses. They were as superior in this respect as were the Greeks in the realm of art, and the Romans in that of government. These facts, which are so universally acknowledged as to need no further reference here, warrant a closer study of the manner of life of the ancient Jewish women than that to which we can offer. These facts, which are so universally acknowledged as to need no further reference here, warrant a closer study of the manner of life of the ancient Jewish women than that to which we can afford space. In the gospel narrative, women hold a large place, as is natural. A very great deal of the grace and beauty of the record of Christ's life is owing to the spirit and presence of the feminine characters. This the evangelists have ungrudgingly conceded. There does not seem to have been the least inclination to minimize the part played by women. Indeed, their attitude toward Christ is by inference, and greatly to their credit, contrasted with that of the men. The women were immediately and entirely won to Christ's cause. They sat at his feet and listened with gratitude to the gracious words which he spake. They brought their children to be blessed by him. They followed him with lamentations when he was led away to death. There were among their number no cavillers, no disbelievers, none to deny or betray. When the enemies of Jesus were clamoring for his death and his male disciples had fled, it was the women he turned and said. It was to the women he turned and said, "Daughters of Jerusalem, weep not for me, but weep." When the enemies of Jesus were clamoring for his death and his male disciples had fled, it was to the women he turned and said, "Daughters of Jerusalem, weep not for me, but weep for yourselves and for your children." Well might the instincts of the daughters of Jerusalem incline them to sympathize with the work and suffering of the man of Nazareth, for it is incontrovertible that no other influence seen in the world's history has done so much as Christianity to raise the condition of woman. The position of woman in Palestine, though much inferior to that of man, was far superior to that which she occupied in other Oriental nations. Jewish law would not permit the wife to fall to the condition of a slave, and Israelitish traditions contained too many memories of noble and patriotic women for the sex to be held otherwise than in honor. A nation whose most glorious records center around such characters as Sarah, Miriam, Deborah, Esther, and Susanna could but recognize in their sex the possibility of the sublimest traits of character. Moreover, every Hebrew woman might be destined to become the mother of the long-hoped Messiah, and the mere possibility of that event won for her a high degree of reverence. At the same time, the Jewish women, like those of all other ancient nations were held in rigid subordination, nor was there any pretense made of their equality with men before the law. A man might divorce his wife for any cause. A woman could not put away her husband under any circumstances. A Jewish woman could not insist on the performance of a religious vow by which she had bound herself if her husband or her father made objection. Yet from the earliest times the property rights of Israelitish women were very liberal. In the book of Numbers it is recorded how Moses decreed that if a man die and have no son, then ye shall cause his inheritance to pass on to his daughter. And if he have no daughter, then ye shall give his inheritance unto his brethren. But tribal rights had to be considered. Possessions were not to be alienated from one tribe to another. Hence it was also decreed that every daughter that possesseth an inheritance in any tribe of the children of Israel shall be wife unto one of the family of the tribe of her father, that the children of Israel may enjoy every man the inheritance of his fathers. In the time of Christ, however, this restriction on marriage was unnecessary, 10 of the tribes not having returned from the captivity. The house at Bethany where Jesus was entertained belonged to Martha, and we read of wealthy women following him and providing for his needs out of their own private fortunes. In the early days among the Hebrews, marriage by purchase from the father or brothers had been the custom, but in the time of which we are writing, a dowry was given with the bride, and she also received a portion from the bridegroom. The inferior position of Jewish women is frequently referred to in the rabbinical writings. A common prayer was, "O God, let not my offspring be a girl, for very wretched." "O God, let not my offspring be a girl, for very wretched is the life of women." It was said, "Happy he whose children are boys, and woe unto him whose children are girls." Public conversation between the sexes was interdicted by the rabbis. No one, says the Talmud, is to speak with a woman, even if she be his wife, in the public street. Even the disciples, accustomed as they were to seeing the master ignore rabbinical regulations, marveled when they found him talking with the woman of Sychar. One of the chief things which teachers of the law were to avoid was multiplying speech with a woman, though women themselves seem to have acquiesced in this degrading injunction. There is a story of a learned lady who called the great Rabbi Jose a Galilean ignoramus, because he had used 2 unnecessary words in inquiring of her the way to Joppa. He had employed but 4. By the Jews, women were regarded as inferior not only in capacity, but also in nature. Their minds were supposed to be of an inferior order, and consequently incapable of appreciating the spiritual privilege, which it was an honor for a man to strive after. Let the words of the law be burned, says Rabbi Eleazar, rather than committed to women. The Talmud says, "He who instructs his daughter in the law instructs her in folly." In the synagogues, women were obliged to sit in a gallery which was separated from the main room by a lattice. Yet it is scarcely to be supposed that in everyday Jewish life the Pharisaical maxims quoted above were adhered to with any great degree of strictness, especially in Galilee, where there was much more freedom than in the lower province. It may well be imagined that there existed a wide difference between these arrogant counsels of perfection and the common practice. There is no doubt that the rabbis and the scribes observed the traditions to the minutest letter, but inasmuch as in these days it would be misleading to delineate the common life of a people by the enactments found on their statute books, we are justified in concluding that ordinary existence in ancient Palestine was not nearly such a burdensome absurdity as the rabbinical law sought to make it. Human nature will not endure too great a strain. At any rate, we can but believe that, subordinate as she may have been, at any rate, we can but believe that, subordinate as she may have been, the Jewish woman found ample opportunity to assert herself. The rabbi may have scorned to multiply speech with his wife on the street, but doubtless, there were occasions which compelled a husband to endure a multiplicity of speech on the part of his wife at home. It was not without experience that the wise man could say, a continual dropping on a very rainy day and a contentious woman are alike. The sayings of the scribes, which are derogatory to the female sex, are abundantly offset by many injunctions of an opposite nature which are found in the sacred and in the expository writings of the Jews. One of the first things drilled into the mind of a young Hebrew was that his prosperity in the land depended wholly upon his observance of the law, that he should honor his father and mother. The virtuous woman portrayed by King Lemuel was still the ideal in the time of Christ. Her sons rise up and praise her. Her husband also extols her. The declaration in the book of Proverbs that the price of a virtuous woman is set far above that of rubies is not to be understood in the sense of irony. Honor your wife, that you may be rich in the joy of your home, says the Talmud. And there was a proverb, is thy wife little? Then bow down to her and speak. The son of Sewage said, he that honoureth his mother is as one that layeth up treasure, and he that angereth his mother is cursed of God. As among all other Eastern peoples, the education of Jewish girls was greatly neglected, but it can hardly be said that they were losers on that account. They were simply saved a great deal of profitless labor, which fell upon their brothers. The learning of the Jews, so far as higher education was concerned, did not add much either to the grace or the enjoyment of life. It was pedantry of the driest and dreariest kind. It consisted of interminable glosses upon the law and of the traditions of the elders. It exercised no faculties of the mind excepting the memory, and such powers of reasoning as are employed in subtle casuistry. There was in it nothing of art or science, or even of history, except Jewish history. Greek learning was abhorred by the strictly orthodox. They said the command was that a man's study should be on the law, day and night. If anyone therefore could find time between day and night, he might apply it to genteel literature. In the fundamental moral precepts, however, and in the highest national ideals, the Jewish girls were no less thoroughly trained than were their brothers. Osias testified to Judith, who with feminine strategy and masculine courage overthrew Holofernes. This is not the first day wherein thy wisdom is manifested, but from the beginning of thy days all the people have known thy understanding, because the disposition of thy heart is good. Of the chaste Susanna, it was said that, her parents being righteous, they taught their daughter according to the law of Moses. Timothy owed his early training to his mother Eunice and his grandmother Lois. The Israelitish mother, in the dawn of her children's intelligence, carefully taught them the lore of the ancient scriptures and instructed them in the principal tenets of the Jewish faith. There never existed another nation that cared so thoroughly for the training of its young in the doctrines of morality and in those national memories which are efficacious in the perpetuation of an ardent patriotism. In all this, the girls were privileged equally with the boys. As Edersheim says, what Jewish fathers and mothers were, what they felt towards their children, and with what reverence, affection, and care the latter returned what they had received, is known to every reader of the Old Testament. The relationship of father has its highest sanction and embodiment in that of God toward Israel. The tenderness and care of a mother in that of the watchfulness and pity of the Lord over his people. Religion was a breath of Jewish life. It is absolutely impossible to touch on Hebrew history, customs, or ideals in any period or to any extent, and not to come into contact with Hebrew religion. This, as we know, was full of burdensome ritual and formalities. The law, with all its elaborate ramifications, governed the minutiae of daily existence. Yet it is again necessary to be careful not to judge too broadly of Jewish life by the rules which the Talmud shows were laid down by the rabbis. The Pharisees, who made the formalities of religion their one business in life, could observe all the multitudinous feasts and fasts, all the ritual of washings, and bear in mind the innumerable possibilities of breaking the Sabbath, such, for example, as accidentally treading on a ripe ear of grain, which would be the act of threshing, but that the common people live thus straitly is impossible of belief. And for this reason they were held in contempt by the strictest sect. How some of these troublesome laws related to the women is suggested by Edersheim. A woman on the Sabbath must not wear such headgear as would require unloosing before taking a bath, nor go out with such ornaments as could be taken off in the street, such as a frontlet, unless it is attached to the cap, nor with a gold crown, nor with a necklace or nose ring, nor with rings, nor have a pin in her dress. The reason for this prohibition of ornaments was that in their vanity women might take them off to show them to their companions, and then, forgetful of the day, carry them, which would be a burden. Women were also forbidden to look in the glass on the Sabbath, because they might discover a white hair and attempt to pull it out, which would be a grievous sin. But men ought not to use looking glasses even on weekdays, because this was undignified. A woman may walk about her own court, but not in the street, with false hair. These are only instances of regulations which were so numerous as severely to tax the memory of those who did little else but study to observe them. We are sure that they could not have characterized the common Jewish life. Yet there was not a man, however loose in conduct or humble of birth, who was not well versed in the moral precepts of Moses and in the exalted national ideals of the prophets. In the cases, and they were many, where this wisdom was not justified of her children, the punctilious observance of outward forms, conjoined with the most extreme arrogance of the race, laid the Jew open to the contempt of both Greek and Roman. Yet there was enough latent impetus and genuine religious life in Israel to form the basis of that Christianity which was destined to overreach Greek philosophy and to revolutionize Rome. And there are many indications in the Gospels that the credit for the incalculable service of preserving alive the smoldering embers of piety must, to a predominant degree, be awarded to the mothers and daughters of Israel.